Yellow. Okay, and we're recording. Why is it muted? So welcome to the show, Neil. I'm so glad to have you finally.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it. This should be really fun.
Yeah, always, always. So, the first question I want to ask you is, I know you do consultations with people from many different places, both in person and through telemedicine. Are there any common themes that you observe and issues that people have?
Yeah, I see too. I do a lot of patients who are just trying to optimize their health, which I love that kind of the paradigm has been flipped here where patients are being more proactive about their health as opposed to only seeing their doctor when they're looking for treatment when they're sick. So that's the first thing. But in terms of like general things that kind of everybody kind of is looking at, it's either the big ones are inflammation, although and inflammation, I'm sure we'll get into a little bit, kind of can affect everything. But there's either it could be anything from joint pain to they're feeling bloated and they just they have abdominal pain to the quote unquote brain fog. So I think, and even skin. Inflammation does a whole bunch of things to your skin. So all those things are kind of interplay. And then it's a lot of the big thing, and the big theme is just energy. People, and unfortunately, with what's going on, is on top of that is just they feel either fatigued or they just they can't they're not used to their gym workout anymore. Or again, like different than brain fog, I call it kind of brain fatigue, where people could sometimes go till 7 o'clock at night and be at their A game, and now that by 3 o'clock they're like, that's it, I'm done. I need a new battery. I need my caffeine hit or whatever it is. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing now, and that's kind of the theme. But again, I think the health that people are definitely targeting themselves more in preventative health and know some of the cool buzzwords that are kind of that as opposed to just like I said, oh my, I'm sick, I'm 50 pounds overweight, and then trying to treat the end result they're starting at the beginning, which I think is really cool.
Right. Yeah. I think that's so huge. And that's really the theme of a lot of what we talk about on this show and what I've heard you talk about, both on your Instagram account and on your website, which are both very informative, is just being proactive because a lot of these signs of inflammation or this kind of slowdown we start to accept as we get older. And it's not something we necessarily have to accept because it's just so slow and it just comes on very, very slowly that we start to accept it to be normal to like be tired at the end of the day or need a little caffeine or sugar pick me up in the middle of the day. And what you're saying, what I'm hearing from you is that's not normal. And that might be a sign that something needs to be refined or fine tuned. So like with that being said, what do you think are like the main causes? Because I know you talk a lot about mitochondrial health and optimizing mitochondria. So how does that interplay with all of these signs and symptoms?
Well, there's definitely kind of not a yin yang, it's not the right way of putting it, but there's definitely interrelationship between that and what we see with patients who have mitochondrial issues is it's stress, it's toxins, it's what they're putting in their body, either in their food or their chemicals, even their cooking utensils. It's the inflammation that they have. It's hormonal imbalance. So it's all of those different things. It's infections that they may not know that they're aware of. It's your immune system being hyperactive, and unfortunately, due to a lot of other things I just mentioned, they have immune issues that are damaging their cells, that damaging their mitochondria, causing everything from brain fog and memory issues to fatigue, and their workouts not as good, and so on. So those are kind of the big 4 or 5 things that kind of interplay almost everything else that's out there: infection, toxins, inflammation. Uh, Lack of sleep is probably the other big one at this point. So
Okay.
it
So
kind of
where does
interplays
somebody
all that.
start? There's so many ways to start here. So obviously, do you start with sleep? Do you start with, for me, I always recommend people avoid plastics because I feel like plastics cause a lot of problems between, toxins and then hormone disruption as well. I'll see a lot of adult female and male, but mostly female hormonal acne around the jaw and the chin. And it's a very different type of acne from a lot of hormonal imbalances. So like where do you have people start with these things when it comes to stress, toxins, hormones, infection, without doing the $1 million workup? Like what's the quickest thing for people to start with at home in order to start the process of getting into a healthier state?
Yeah, it's like health is like building a house at this point. Right now, if you don't have the foundation, you could have the prettiest shutters or the nicest, coolest TV. If you don't have the foundation going, the house is still going to fall apart at some point. It's sleep. It's making sure you're getting your 7 hours sleep, maintaining your circadian rhythm. We know that maintaining that rhythm where you're getting up every day at the same time and getting your morning sunlight does not just help your sleep, but it helps your insulin, which affects your weight and your brain and all those things. It also is going to affect your gut health, which is going to affect everything else. It's when your body detoxes, when your body regulates its hormones. It regulates growth hormone, or regulates cortisol, which is your stress hormone. It's going to regulate melatonin, which not only you need for sleep, but you also need it for as an antioxidant. You need it for anti-inflammatory. You need it for it could be antiviral at this point. So it's starting with sleep, exercise. I mean, it sounds so simple, and now it's starting to rev back up. And exercise is just so important. I mean, it helps, again, it boosts what's called BDNF, which is a chemical in the brain, which boosts the connections in the brain, which we call neuroplasticity. We talk about the mitochondria, we'll go into a little bit more probably, but your mitochondria is the energy, the battery part of your cell. It's your little power pellets for those old people who know what Pac-Man is. So there you go. Yeah, we're both raising our hands on the thing.
Yeah, Pac-Man was my game.
Yeah, so so it's the power part of your cell, helps your body detox. And we know that both sleep helps regulate your mitochondria. It can decrease inflammation, but also we know exercise will help your body boost the level of mitochondria, especially in the muscles, the brain, and your heart where you need them, especially. And it also helps your body kind of get rid of the bad ones. Like anything else, you got to do your spring cleaning. You got to get rid of the old mitochondria and get the new ones in. So, I mean, it's exercise, it's diet, and it doesn't have to be a one size. I don't believe in a one size fits all diet for almost anybody. I mean, the one overlapping thing is usually eating and avoiding anti-inflammatory foods for patients, things like sugar and gluten for some people who are having medical issues. I mean, sugar for everybody. And then it's just maintaining your stress, having that. We know that maintaining a healthy lifestyle, meditation has all these benefits. That's been shown. It's been shown to decrease inflammation 25%. It's been shown to help boost energy. And those are things that you can do pretty much for free. And you can do them every day, and you can get your morning routine going, then get your whole life health routine going, and then you can add on the cool stuff or the supplements or whatever. Then the next step is getting some basic lab work done. It doesn't have to be the $1 million trillion workup. It could be fine-tuned. You say, okay, I'm sleeping well, I'm exercising, my diet's pretty good, but I'm still losing a little bit of hair, or I'm feeling a little tired, or my workout's not where it used to be, and then the doctor can fine-tune it. And it's not, again, it doesn't have to be something that's insanely elaborate.
That is amazing. There's so much to unpack there. And I think it's so important that you pointed out all of these things that are within everybody's hands without fancy equipment or without, $1 million workup. So just to confirm that I heard you right, sleep and having a normal circadian rhythm and a consistent routine and all of the right sleep behaviors are essential. There's plenty of information out there. I love Matthew Walker's book on why we sleep, and I know you have great stuff on your Instagram. Talking about good sleep hygiene and how to put things together well in order to get sleep, because all of the regeneration and repair is done when we sleep, right? With that being said, though, what are your thoughts on melatonin? Because I know melatonin's got a lot in the press this year because of its ability to kind of help modulate the immune system, which is the highlight of 2020, right? What are your thoughts on regular use of melatonin, the dosage that you recommend, how you recommend people use it, or is it person specific?
Ironically, and that's come up so many times, and it's getting more and more press for some of the good stuff it does. I actually I use melatonin now very little for sleep, for my sleep patients, because if they regulate their cycle, and there's so many things that are better, because we don't want to we don't want to try to add too much melatonin, which will upset the apple cart, and then your body will not make its natural melatonin, or melatonin affects your serotonin, which affects your mood and your tryptophan and all these other things. So I don't love patients taking melatonin for sleep. If you are going to take it for the sleep, if you look at the studies, unless you give it to somebody who unfortunately has autism, it's about 0.5 to maybe 1 milligram, not the 3 milligrams that you see as kind of the standard dose at most health food stores or online. And they also did a study where they did it for a lot of the brands like that you can find like at your local chain pharmacy. Not gonna name any names there, but any chain pharmacy, and what they say is in there is not usually in there.
As with most supplements, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't use it much for that anymore. I mean, again, it's low dose, and I'll use it. I try to make it more compounded, where it's a sustained release rather than something you don't want to. We can see me, but it's going to be where it goes. You don't want to have a high peak and then it crashes like caffeine. You want to have a nice steady release where it kind of works. But I use melatonin, as you mentioned, now with a lot of the other studies that are coming out. Again, it's an antioxidant, a lot of the other benefits at a higher dose, but for shorter periods of time, and in patients who, and actually in the morning, so it doesn't mess with their sleep cycle. So it's kind of paradigms being flipped, and a lot of doctors are kind of doing that, either not recommending melatonin for sleep, or again, short bursts. If you need it, hey, that one night that you just can't sleep and it works for you, 0.5, 1 milligram, that's it. And otherwise, try to let your lifestyle fix it. So it's kind of changed. Melatonin has become one of those little hot topics that are, next year or two will be one of those things that people it'll be very interesting to see where it goes.
Right. Sort of like we've seen with vitamin D as well, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. So maybe some, 0.5 to 1 milligrams for a few nights if you're having a difficult time resetting from jet lag or a work shift schedule. And then keep your eyes open for information out there for the higher dosages in the morning for, maybe some immune boosting activities. But going back to light, you mentioned light, and, light and exercise can be incorporated together, right? Because you wake up in the morning, and we're really fortunate here in Arizona to have great sunlight in the morning. So I find either getting up and getting in front of the red light. I have a Juve red light, and I think you're a fan of the red light. And or getting outside will help to reset some of your circadian rhythms. What are your thoughts and recommendations on that?
No, I mean, a natural light. I mean, that you said they're saying, again, another kind of term that I've heard in the last 6 months more than I think I've ever heard it before, is affect your night in the morning and even the day before. Because if you're getting up, getting outside before 9 a.m., getting your eyes seeing that natural light, it works on the areas of the brain that helps you produce melatonin, and that's going to help you have a really good night's sleep. Plus, the exercise itself is going to help you sleep because you're working your body hard. So if you're lucky enough to be in Arizona where you can pretty much work outside year round, that's awesome. I live in Manhattan, where it's not as easy to do sometimes.
That's where I'm from. I get the dark winters. Yeah.
So it's definitely it's something, again, very simple and free. In terms of the red light, I love red light therapy. I mean, I do it as much as I can. It has just so many uses, and again, that's something that it's going to get bigger and bigger. There's a bunch of studies going now, especially in terms of brain health and testosterone boosting. But I mean, it's something that you can do very simple, 10 minutes a day. I mean, I recommend that patients try it out first to see if it works. You can go to a dermatologist or a spa or recovery studio. They all have them now. The only thing we're warning people now is that certain ones will have a higher level of EMF leakage, which actually may make them feel worse or not get the same benefit. So I've mentioned some of them on my social media, what I recommend over the ones that I don't love as much. Some of the ones who came out first had really good marketing, but weren't as great high quality product. And now it's kind of flipped, where there's so many good high quality products in terms of red light. And you don't need to have that huge panel anymore. It's great if you can, but a lot of the mini ones work very well. There's another product that's like, I don't know if I'm using name brands, but
please give name brands. Yeah, there's no conflict of interest. So
I mean, Flex Beam, which is a wrap, is really helpful. It's a company from Europe.
Flex Beam.
Yep.
FLEXBEAM.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then Red Light Rising and Mitochondrial has some smaller units that are very helpful, that have had really good results. And they're also doing the studies now in terms of like testosterone and boosting. I've had patients, they have small studies that show may elevate testosterone like 600 points in patients who had really low testosterone. They don't have to go on medication. And now the big studies are the ones like a company called Vilight is using in terms of for dementia and just overall brain health. And so that'll be really exciting too.
Oh, so let me ask you, with the red light, do you recommend it AM, PM? What time of day is the best time?
I recommend it. It depends. I tend to recommend it optimally in the morning. The only time it may help with melatonin production. So if you're giving to patients who maybe have a little bit of insomnia, you can do it later in the day. So it'll trigger the kind of, will undo all the fluorescent light that people have seen during the day. So I don't do it too often, but if that's one of the things you're looking for, and honestly, if patient you're using it as an anti-inflammatory tool, then you can do it at night. But in a perfect world, you should be try and do it 10 minutes a day in the morning if you can do it.
Okay, and then maybe a little at night, but you're not worried about the nitric oxide boost or anything like that at night, or it actually helps with the melatonin?
I wouldn't do it right at bedtime. I do a couple hours before bed.
Okay.
I've had nobody complain to me about insomnia. It's possible based on some of the things it does.
Mhm.
So that's why, I mean, not right before bed is not the best way to do it. I mean, except actually, I know the only people that do it are by patients who wear the helmets. They do it before they go to bed, but they're not as strong. So I really haven't seen it.
Okay, and then tell me about this testosterone boosting. How is that done? Is that like on the genitals, or how does a red light boost testosterone? Because we know that lower testosterone is such a problem nowadays, which I'm convinced is from the environment, where our our lifestyles are lowering male testosterone, and the answer is not just taking testosterone. It's learning all of these strategies that you like to share to help boost testosterone. So how does the red light do it, and what how do you do that?
Yeah, the red light, I mean, they don't know the work on the mechanism. They don't know if it helps regulate the other hormones, if it just stimulates because you are putting it right into the general, about 6 inches, 4 to 6 inches from the general region. There's actually a new wrap a friend of mine just sent me that they're working with that actually goes right pretty much on top of the area because it's become a niche market at this point. Yeah, about 5-10 minutes, same thing, 10 minutes, 4 to 5 times a day. Most people, men, do it naked. About 4 to 6 inches from the red light, and I've seen at least personally double-digit patients where the testosterone goes high. And now again, there's a couple small studies that back that up. So
What period of time
in terms of 3 to
for the
6 months,
boost? 3 to 6 months
I've
consistent.
seen it in patients' lab work in 3 months.
Okay, wow, that's really impressive. That's really impressive. And then it kind of probably just circles back on itself because testosterone gets higher, you start feeling better, you exercise more, then you start looking better, and then you take care, then you start eating better. And it's just a beautiful cycle that kind of feeds into itself. So,
Exactly.
yeah, okay.
Simple thing. Simple thing.
Right, right. So exercise, especially if you can get out during the day, and then diet, which we've talked about so much, and getting rid of the chemicals. Because I always think of like if you have soda, basically your body is expending so much energy and your liver is becoming exhausted to remove all of the chemicals and all the artificial color and flavor out of there just to get water. So instead of just exhausting your body, just drink water, right? And okay, so and then controlling stress and meditating, are there any specific types of meditations that you find to be more beneficial or easier for newbies to implement?
I mean, the first part, I mean, I've learned it personally myself as I kind of like to dabble with these things. Is that again, it's kind of come more mainstream. Is everybody in terms of generally meditation is not a one size fits all thing. There's some that I've done that I will never do again that I find made me hyper and I felt worse afterwards.
Definitely.
And I have a friend who teaches it and it's the only thing he does and it's changed his life. So it's not a one meditation. Is something you should need to kind of mix and match. It's kind of like whatever car you like to drive or whatever your favorite wine is, whatever it happens to be. It's that type of thing. I find the simplest thing is either box breathing, which is you start doing either like a 4-4-4-4, where you're in for four,
Yeah, go
hold,
ahead.
yeah,
In for
um,
four. Go ahead, explain that to everyone.
in for four, hold for four, out for four, hold for four. I mean, also is the 4-6-7. I mean, those are the simple ones that I think
Mhm.
patients start with, and they will even feel it after doing a couple of those, and then they go down the rabbit hole where they'll do 10, 15 minutes of it a couple times a day, but a couple times a week. But that's a great starting point. But again, another one I like is just nasal breathing because we're now finding more and more evidence of importance of nasal breathing in general health. You mentioned nitric oxide briefly before. It boosts nitric oxide production. We know that now studies are saying you should be nose breathing when you're sleeping. So you're not only will your sleep scores go up, but we know that you get better deep sleep and all those things. So we know that doing nasal breathing techniques. And I'm a Wim Hof guy. I love that combining with cold. So that's my thing. But again, everybody's got to find that thing that works for them, and whatever they find is their go-to. Some are more
Right.
calming, some are more stimulating, some are much more complicated. And you really got to build up a practice. Some you could like a box breath you can do if your child is stressing you out or your job is stressing you out. You can just do it, and you get that kind of that quick improvement.
Mhm. I agree 100%. It doesn't have to be, this thing that this obscure idea. Meditation isn't really obscure. It's very tangible. It's very easy for people to have a hold of nowadays. And, I think when I first started, I used the Headspace app. I still sometimes use that if I want to fall back asleep at night. And there's the Calm app. There's all these little apps that are pretty free for the basics. And then the breathing, I think, is fabulous. It really helps to reset, and I'll do it in the grocery line or when we're sitting in traffic or something like that. I like the box breath as well, or Andrew Weil's breath of you inhale for 4, you hold for 7, and you exhale for 8. And I find that to be really good in getting me back into parasympathetic mode, and for a lot of my patients as well. And it seems very, very simple, but when our cortisol is regulated and it's balanced and we're not stressed out all the time, all the other hormones also kind of fall into place. So these things seem so simple, but yet they're extremely powerful. So it's human nature to want to reach for all of these biohacks and reach for all these devices and reach for supplements. And they're great. There's definitely a place for them. At the end of the day, though, I think it comes back to these, 4 main things that you talk about of sleep, exercise, diet, and managing stress. But I do want to talk a little bit more about mitochondrial health and why is mitochondrial health even important? I mean, what's the big deal about mitochondria, just from a bird's eye view?
Pretty much the answer is, again, the stuff that's come out this year is kind of pointed is that pretty much everything at this point is it related to mitochondrial health. I mean, it's everything from inflammation, we know is related to mitochondrial health. There's a couple of treatments coming out for patients with like arthritis that are targeting the mitochondrial and mitochondrial damage. It affects, I mean, we know the other big one is, again, we know it affects brain health. There's a bunch of things coming down the line in terms of how that's where they're targeting now for things like Alzheimer's and brain memory loss and things like that. So it affects your energy level because it's definitely the power part of your cell. It affects your body's ability to detox if it's not working as well. It also affects your aging for people who are want to live to their 120 years old now. When they become zombie cells, or what they're calling them now, where they produce chemicals called senescent. They're in senescence, where they produce a chemical that, again, leads to inflammation, and it can lead to fatigue and cause damage throughout the body. So you want to have a healthy mitochondria because it does a lot of things while it's going, and then even when it's not working and it's kind of done, it's unless you do things to clear your body of them, it's still going to cause some issues. So it's kind of become like the whatchamacallit. It's just involved in everything we know is related to heart disease. That there's when they treated patients' mitochondria, that they had less heart disease or even less heart damage. It just everything kind of now seems to be going back to the mitochondria at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're pretty amazing. And I think you brought up a good point. So it's not just about having healthy and strong mitochondria, but as we get older, when the mitochondria die off, they kind of sit around like a bunch of, you know, dead things taking place in the cells, and they're not accomplishing anything, and they're taking up space so that the healthy mitochondria can't optimally function. So like, how do we promote mitophagy, or getting rid of the useless zombie cell mitochondria? I know fasting is popular right now.
Yeah, fasting. I love fasting in men. I'm going to say it now because somebody will yell at me if I don't. Is fasting in men is great if you're a female. Especially a menstruating female, you definitely want to talk to your doctor about how you fast, because it's not one size fits all for females in the younger females in terms of if they should be fasting, especially if you're younger or have autoimmune issues. But I think fasting is really good for mitophagy. Cold immersion, either cold showers or cold plunges, is really good for mitophagy. A product doing a form of it is actually even better, something called time restricted eating, where you eat in that same window every day. Like fasting, you're just not eating for a certain period of time, no matter what time of the day it is. If you're trying to keep that same time, especially they say to eat from dusk to dawn, and then I say no, yeah, and then not eating the rest of the day actually has been shown to boost it. There's a really cool product out there now called spermidine, which again has become that melatonin. We've kind of hit on the new wonder things of 2021 at this point. It's been shown again. Their studies are coming fast and furious, and I have probably at least 70% of my patients on it now. for almost anything, but it's really great for autophagy, and mitophagy, which it helps to clear out those zombie cells as well. And then there's more niche products. I mean, there's things like quercetin and ficodin and a bunch of other stuff that are don't have a huge effect, but definitely are helpful. Again, we would talk about sleep already. And then, so there's a bunch of things you can definitely do. Exercise also helps your body clear those things out. So high intensity exercise more than anything else. So
Okay, gosh, can you
definitely
tell I'm
want to.
getting excited? I'm like jumping around in my seat. I'm so excited about everything you're saying because this is the kind of stuff I love. So, okay, so fasting, yes, I agree with the time restricted eating. And I know David Sinclair's studies have showed, like 24 hours, autophagy starts to kick in, and then maximally at 72 hours. It's kind of hard for most people to do. And yes, menstruating women, it's very different. And I personally know certain times of my cycle, it's very possible to intermittent or time restrict eat, and other times it's not. Um, so, what Dr. Paulvin's basically saying is that if you're a woman who cycles, there's certain times where your hormones do not respond very well to time restricted eating or fasting. And what can happen is you can have high cortisol levels in response to that fasting, which can kind of defeat the purposes of doing this in the first place. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, especially we're finding like the week around when your actual menses is going to come, it's not the best time to be fasting. The
No,
first or second week is much easier, and they've seen a much better results. I mean, insulin resistance, or the improvement with insulin and weight and all the things that people are doing it for are much more advantageous there than they
for
would be
sure.
like the last week of your cycle.
And I mean, as a woman who's intuitive and with her body, just listen to your body. There's going to be times where you're going to carb crave, and that's usually the week before your period and the couple of days into your period, and those are not the best times to do this intermittent fasting. And you still have another 2 good, really, really good weeks to do some time restricted eating, where you're going 14 hours or so without eating. So have your last meal at 5 or 6 o'clock, and then wait until 8 or 9 the next day, and that would be great. And then as far as cold immersion goes, are you someone who goes into the tub? Do you recommend, like, what do you recommend? And I know if you do Wim Hof, you're probably like in the tub doing some heavy breathing. But for most people, is it like in the shower to your forehead? Like, what kind of cold immersion do you recommend for the average person to do?
Well, in a perfect world, a cold plunge is the best way to do it, because you're merging your most, if not all, of your body. If you, I mean, not everybody can do that. I mean, now there's ice barrels and all these little gadgets that
Yeah.
are out there that can do it. But
For how
no, if
long?
you, depends who you talk to. There's actually been debates on it. 3 to 6 months is the sweet spot. 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 minutes is the sweet spot. I mean, it's doing a couple times a week. But you definitely don't start there. I mean, I have patients start in the shower, 30 seconds, and work yourself up to about a minute and a half. And then then now people are just doing yourself. They just put ice cubes in the bathtub and they get going with it. And if you're in a really stressed state, it may not be the best time. If you're very hypersympathetic, but you're also stressed out, it may not be the perfect time to do it. But when things calm down, it's just like, it's very sedating, and they're now recommending cold showers to help patients sleep.
I was going to
Because
ask you, do you like it at night, in the morning, after exercise? Like, when do you think
I do
strategically is the best time, or anytime?
anytime. It depends what you're doing it for. I mean, I do it after. I'll do it because they're different things. If I'm doing it after a workout to decrease the inflammation, I do in the morning because I get by the key by it calming me down, parasympathetic. I'm much more focused with other things that I do in my part of my morning routine. I also have done it once or twice to help me sleep. I don't have a problem falling asleep at all. I'm the opposite. I mean, I'm ready to go to bed, like, so I'm good there. But again, it depends what you're doing it for. You could do it twice a day if you had to. But again, like anything else, you need to figure out what you're using it for. But yeah, if you work that hard in the morning, you can do a cold shower and then, or a cold plunge, and then do it for 15 seconds before you go to bed, and then it'll give you a nice sleep. And you don't have to worry about taking your melatonin.
So I mean, that's a good point. It's not an all or nothing. You don't have to say like, oh, I don't have a tub to do the cold plunge in, so I'm not going to do it. So what you're saying, what I'm hearing is that you can just go in the shower and do 15 to 30 seconds and you're going to get some sort of benefit.
Mhm. I know I've done them. Yeah, you can start with 15 or 30 seconds. Just put on as, I tell people, just go, you put it as, turn the knob as far left as it's going to go. Make sure you may not want your head under there the first time. Let it hit your back and flip around. And it's really not that bad. 95% of people can do it.
Yeah.
There's some who just can't, But I mean, I've done Wim Hof things where somebody's never done it before and they're in the bath for 4.5, 5 minutes. It's amazing what your body can do. And you just feel so relaxed after the first 30, 45 seconds that your body just is in that parasympathetic state, and it's awesome. But
And
different
it's
strokes for different
free.
folks.
Yeah, it's free too. It's worth a try. It's accessible to pretty much all of us, except for those of us who live in Arizona in the summer. You can't get cold water out of the tap at all. It's literally like 100 degrees when it comes out. It doesn't come out cold. It's that hot. Okay, I
Okay,
wanted
that's a new one. Okay, I'll
you
write that
turn
one.
the hot water heater off in the summer and it still comes out hot. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so let's talk about spermidine. I'm on my second bottle of it. Um, I can't say I noticed anything huge, but it's that kind of a thing that you're not going to notice something huge right away. Or what are you seeing with it? I'm pretty excited about it. I've seen the studies on it and I'm going to keep taking it. But explain to people what it is besides having a weird name and how it works and what they
Well,
can expect or what you've seen in your
trying to think how to
clinical
answer that one.
experience.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it's what's called a polyamine. It is a derivative offshoot of sperm. Sperm does have it. I get that. That's always the first question. It is not sperm though. And it is a polyamine. It's found in certain foods, natto, potatoes, a couple other foods that you can get it in. Not usually at the same levels, but you can get it in foods. There are patients who don't want to take supplements. They try to get it from food. But it works on totally different mechanisms. Like we mentioned before, it will induce autophagy and mitophagy. It'll boost nitric oxide production. We're finding now that it helps to lower blood pressure by working on nitric oxide. We now know that it crosses the blood-brain barrier and decreases a lot of the inflammatory chemicals like NF-kappa B and IL-6 and all these other ones that are inflammatory. It increases blood flow, so it helps heal wounds. It helps the skin look good. I know women now in a group that I'm in are actually breaking it up and putting in their skincare products and either doing it as a cream or now even microneedling it. And I guess everything now people are microneedling, but
Is it absorbed? Is it absorbed through the skin without microneedling?
they say it is. I mean, I'm in a group with
Hmm,
a couple of the owners of the product in Europe, and they say that it works incredibly well. They're working on studies now for it.
that's
Um,
amazing.
So but yeah, she's in like, I mean, I know I know the owners of the two major companies, and they literally send me studies every day on how good it is. But it's also good for, again, it gets blood pressure down. They're now studying it in terms of gut health because they know now that it's helping heal that one layer for patients who have leaky gut or inflammation from inflammatory bowel disease. They're doing further studies on that. They don't know the exact mechanism yet. They also know it works on the microbiome, which we all know how good that is. So it does so many things, and people are into the aging spectrum. The 9 hallmarks of aging. It also works on telomeres, maybe. So they've now said it gets up to 7 of them. They're
Hmm.
hoping that they can prove that it works on all 9. So
Right.
it's just one of those things that, depending on how you're using it, I know my inflammation went down. I know my brain, anytime my brain feels clearer. Um, but it's one of the things, if it's working on senescence or it's working on your telomeres or it's causing autophagy, you may not notice anything. One other thing that now also know that it helps to lower cholesterol levels. I forgot the
Mm.
mechanism on the top of my head. So
I've
it
noticed
may,
energy. Like for me, it's energy. I'm usually done by 7 p.m. Like, okay, I'm ready to go back and turn on Netflix and I can just go up until I go to sleep now.
yeah, so it's definitely, that's what people tell me they notice the most.
Hmm.
And again, there's a bunch of stuff that'll be coming out in the next year that hasn't been definitively proven yet, but it looks pretty good. That'll be bigger stuff than that.
That's exciting. So, do you find that people get more benefits if they take the spermidine in the morning while they're intermittently fasting or time restricted eating? Or do you recommend they take it with their first meal that they have after they break the fast? Or is there any specific time that you find that works a little bit better than another time?
It depends again, it's one of those things where it depends what you're taking it for. Most people take it in the morning. There are people who use it for sleep and other things at night to help them relax. So
Hmm.
they take it at night.
Okay.
But majority I'd say take in the morning, but it's not set in stone.
Yeah, I like it for, I'm all about autophagy right now at this age. I feel like autophagy is an important thing to kind of reset and then everything falls into place. Okay, that's really exciting. So spermidine is super exciting. We'll have the link to spermidine on the in the show notes as well. I'll make sure because that's definitely one of the top ones I'm excited about. What about TA65? What are your thoughts on that? That's been around for quite a while. Do you have any thoughts on that as far as a telomerase activator?
Yes and no and maybe is all kind of one of those things.
Exactly. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
Because I mean, the studies show, and another study just came out, it definitely helps. It will prolong telomere length. It can definitely decrease inflammation. It can get rid of senescent cells. So it definitely has
Mhm.
benefits. Is it, so that's as far as I go with it.
There's a new
Is it,
study with immune regulating that just came out
yeah,
this week. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it definitely has benefits for it. Is it gonna, is it, is, but the gap is the telomerase and all those things lead to longer life, which no, all the scientists will tell you that it doesn't exist yet. There's no direct A to B link there. Some other things that are out there. So if that's what you're taking, that's not the go-to, but for the other benefits you're getting for it, if you can afford it, it's really good product. I know from, at least I haven't looked at, I don't use as much as I used to, but I know it used to be pretty expensive, but it definitely is getting more and more studies backing it up in terms of other benefits to it. And like you said, the great study just came out this week or last week on the benefits in terms of the immune system and immunosenescence and
Mhm.
anti-inflammatory, all these things. So
Yeah. I've taken it for maybe 6 years, and I took a break at one point for about 3 or 4 months, and it was kind of like spermidine for me. Like, I didn't really notice anything when I was on it, but when I stopped it, I didn't feel as well, so I started taking it again, and that's kinda how it was for spermidine as well. So, all these, like, kind of low level things that you don't really pay attention to, which is what creeps up on us over time as well, right? And we don't
exactly.
realize, like, that stiffness in the morning, no, that's not really normal, like, you don't have to have that, right? There's ways to get rid of that. Can we just touch really briefly on quercetin and fisetin?
Sure. And they are what we call polyphenols. They help with a lot of things. There are some studies ongoing now in terms of, I mean, they're good for, just in general, they're really good for inflammation. They're good for, quercetin is really good for allergies. I mean, for me, it's allergy season. I take it as part of my cocktail, so I don't take the like my Allegra every day and feel sedated. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's great for gut health, but now they're finding they may have a use back to what we're talking about in terms of the zombie cells or the dead cells that it's called what they're terming a senolytic, which means that you're getting rid of the senescent cells. There's some studies going with a cancer product, which I can never pronounce, Decinab, which didn't turn out that well. So it's there. Fisetin is also a polyphenol, which also they think maybe a better senolytic. It's also become really big for NAD patients who take NAD, that it actually will boost, it'll block the breakdown of NAD. So a lot of my patients are combining those two things. It's also good. I have a lot of, I deal with chronic illness patients. They have what are called mast cell issues, which are the cells that produce histamine, while you may get a hives or something. And it works really well. Fisetin is really helpful to deal with that without having to put them on steroids and all these really strong immunosuppressants. So
Okay, so you like those? Okay, because I use quercetin a lot for that as well, but for the histamine release. So that's without causing.
Fisetin is kind of taken over a
Ah,
lot.
that's great. That's great to know. And then, so with quercetin, I like 500 milligrams twice a day. What's your recommendation with fisetin?
That's good.
Which I say fisetin,
You
fisetin,
put me on the
fisetin.
spot. I think it's 400 milligrams. Don't
Okay.
quote me on that though. I have to that.
Okay. Is there a certain company that you recommend with that? Because you know how it is with supplements, you can't always trust what's in there. So it comes down to the reputation of the
Yeah.
companies typically.
I know there's a company called Alive by Science that makes one. I think Quicksilver makes one off the top of my head. It's actually very hard to find now.
Hmm.
I don't know why, but so I get it from those two companies. A lot of the other companies don't make pure just fisetin. They make it in a combo, it's in a lot of the anti-aging combo compounds, but not by itself.
Okay. Okay. And then you mentioned exercise as far as promoting mitophagy or just the healthier mitochondria dominating and getting rid of the zombie mitochondria and high intensity interval training. So like what are the exercises you recommend to promote promote that? Because obviously we don't want to do high intensity interval training every day because we're going to start getting a little cortisol dominant. So like what's a great workout plan for people on average? I mean, I know it's personalized, but like you saying hit twice a week, going walking, like what do you recommend usually for most of your patients?
I can break it into two buckets. Probably the easiest way to do it is for the most people or the people just getting started with it. I mean, they can say 20 minutes 2 or 3 times a week is fine, as long as you're getting your heart rate up into that red range, or at least close to it, is fine. Doesn't have to be an hour and 20-minute workout or anything like that. Those quick high yield workouts are actually better. We're finding for things like this and just in general health that you don't have to work. Again, working out over 45 minutes may actually be detrimental in some cases, because you mentioned cortisol and a couple other factors that actually increase inflammation and affect your gut, and the damage to the gut may lead to some issues as well. Not do it every day. I mean, you definitely taking a 1 hour workout class twice a week is fine. But now we're finding there's some cool toys out there that can also augment it, where you can work out in like, there's a couple tools you can work out in like 6 minutes and achieve the same burn and more weight loss with it, and also get yourself into more mitophagy and autophagy. I mean, there's tools called the ARX or Carol Bike, where this little bike that actually you hear have little headphones on, and it just takes all your glycogen stores away, and they put actually literally, you're chased by a bear, you ride as fast as you can, and then you stop, and that you can literally, they have data backing up where you can work out in 6 minutes. And something that's also kind of becoming more down to everybody are the blood flow restriction bands. I mean, it's something I would definitely recommend people talk to their trainer or their doctor about initially, but a brand name Katsu has really gotten to a lot of the mainstream now. And patients have gotten really, just by doing that type of workout in a couple minutes, will get the same benefit. Oh, hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know, and I heard on a podcast the other day somebody was creating blood flow restriction workout clothing, because I know the Katsu bands can be a little bit challenging for some people to figure out, or they can be kind of expensive as well.
Yeah,
Um,
it's common. They're coming. There's the blood flow restriction. Now they're making it with the stim, and then they're making the stim compress. It's going to be all that stuff's coming down the next year or two. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. So let's jump a little bit into peptides, which is one of the main reasons I contacted you. But obviously, you have so much great information on other things as well that I think is a little bit more tangible for most people. And I've been using peptides for about 3 or 4 years now, and they get harder to get because of how things are changing a little bit. So what are you using? Let's just focus on mitochondrial health. Like, what peptides would you say? Well, let's say for energy. Let's just say for energy overall and lean body mass. Like, what are your top peptides?
Let me just take a step back. What I'll say is, I mean, everything else is about foundation. And they help with a lot of things. Is the core two really are, or 2.5 are really going to be BPC 157, which is kind of the worker bee of all peptides, where it's going to decrease inflammation. It's going to help a little bit with oxidative stress. It helps regulate some hormones that we know, including growth hormone. That's important with mitochondrial because of the inflammation and the antioxidant effect of it. The other one is called thymosin beta 4.
Can we jump
Um,
into, well, can I just talk about BP 157?
sure.
Because I've seen it in a cream form versus oral versus like a sub Q. And when do you like each one? Or are there any forms you're not impressed
I'm
with?
Unless you're using it for a burn or facial applications, I am an injection person all day long. It's just not as effective.
I agree. Yeah.
Especially I'm worried about gut absorption. I mean, if I have somebody who's really scared of needles, I'll do 1 month of the injection. I'm like, look, we'll do 1 month of injection, then we can switch to the oral, which I've seen work with some people. It just doesn't work as well.
Mhm.
And that's for a lot of the peptides. There's some that work well otherwise. And again, so that's how I tell patients do it initially. And thymosin beta 4 is also really good for immune system and healing. And then you get into the kind of the specialized ones in terms of energy. I mean, the couple ones I really love are something called MOTS-c, which actually just got a call out in the New York Times, which is amazing to me. Actually this week, I think. MOTS-c works on AMPK, which is one of the energy boosters of the cell in general, and the mitochondria, and that the whole balance, which is a whole nother lecture by itself. But it works really well. It also boosts NAD, so that is, and has some anti-aging benefits as well. And then they're doing a study now in terms of longevity. So that is probably the simplest one to take. You can do it like once a week or up to 3 times a week. Another one that also got mentioned in the same article is called SS31.
Yeah, that's where my radar is right now. I haven't used it yet.
I
Okay.
can't even pronounce it. It's a lipramide, I think, off the top of my head. I just call it SS31. That is probably the biggest primetime player if you can get it. It works on cardiolipin, which we mentioned oxidative stress at the beginning, I think. It helps to undo the oxidative stress to the mitochondria. The mitochondria has a little railroad track that it helps produce energy and some other hormones that the body needs. And if there's damage there, it's like having a little hole or damage to that railroad line. So it's doing is kind of fixing that railroad line. I have a bunch of cheesy analogies that work
I
sometimes.
love it. That's great.
Uh,
That's a great analogy, actually. I'm going to use that one.
so it's they're now doing studies in terms of neurodegenerative issues and also longevity, and also that's the ones that shown some benefit with NAD in terms of the heart. But that's been one of my go-tos now for mitochondrial health. It's just a little more, it's on the expensive side, and the dosing is all over the place right now. You've talked to different people, you look with the studies, they did high doses, I've seen low doses work better. I mean, some people, so dosing is really patient and doctor dependent at this point.
It's like epitalin. Some people do small dose every day, and other people do like higher doses for short
That's
periods of
usually a
time.
little different. A Pidilon,
Okay.
if you're doing it low dose, low dose is meant for sleep. Low dose is meant for if you're trying to turn your hair ungray, trying to change your hair from not being gray anymore. You're doing for bone growth, short, that's for a month or two. If you're doing the anti-aging for the Cavison protocol, that should be high dose. If you're doing the low dose for a month or two, you're not getting the telomere, as much of the telomere stuff. The SS31 is just too new to really have that. And it's also costing. If you take the full dose, which is recommended in the studies, it's going to run you a couple $1,000s a month.
Yeah.
And most people just can't afford that, and they
No,
don't want to do it if something that's not ready for prime time yet.
exactly. Okay. Okay, great. And then how about the like the ipamorelins and all those? What are your thoughts on those? What we can get
Um,
nowadays? I know tesamorelins like hard to get, but
in terms of the CJ, the growth hormone ones, CDC has autophagy studies that show it does boost autophagy. With
okay.
any of the growth hormone ones, those are the ones I would just recommend to anybody out there. Those are the ones that I know people try to be self-starters with peptides now. Those are the ones you definitely want to work with somebody on, and make sure you have some lab work behind you, just because I've seen people really get wild by not taking ridiculous dosing or the wrong thing. I just want to throw that out there. CDC is great for autophagy. That's the one I use for patients in terms of mitochondrial health. There are, like you mentioned, testosterone, which is kind of the Ferrari of the growth hormone peptides. It's great short term. It's going to help the cholesterol, helps the heart, opens up the blood vessels, things like that. A little bit of autophagy, not as much. I mean, just by putting on muscle and decreasing your insulin resistance is definitely going to help the energy and will help the mitochondria second, third line. I haven't seen as much in terms of mitochondrial health from that one. So those are I tend to be more CJC in terms of mitochondrial. And also, again, it comes down to be frank, it's about a fifth of the price.
And availability, yeah. What about
Exactly.
sermorelin?
I don't really use it much anymore.
It's just not. It's like a Honda.
People get hangry on it and get bloated,
Oh,
and it just doesn't work, and people get bloated on it, and it doesn't work as well. So the only reason I would use it is because it's less. Honestly, it's cheaper, and it's part of the study that people are using in terms of the anti-aging, combining with like DHEA and DHEA and that. So, and that's helpful, but I don't use it as much anymore. I used it a couple years ago. Patients either loved it or they hated it, and that's why they added the ones like the CJC, because you didn't get
mhm.
bloated and hangry and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So I know you mentioned definitely working with someone if someone's going to do these peptides, because you can buy peptides on the black market and it can be quite dangerous. So, who do people look for? Because do they look for a regenerative medicine doctor? I mean, who typically will prescribe peptides, because it's a little all over the place. It's basically those of us that are interested in them are prescribing them for people and walking them through this journey.
A lot of it's regenerative, quote unquote, regenerative medicine. It's become, I mean, I've seen a lot with regenerative medicine or anti-aging doctors. They are usually the niche I've seen. Some orthopedists will use, again, then some orthopedists will use it for some of the bone stuff, recovery. And then obviously dermatologists are now using it for the cosmetic benefits and so on. But I mean, anti-aging regenerative medicine, but you have to ask, where did you learn about it? Obviously now between somebody's website and their social media or their podcast, you're going to know who's knowing what you're talking about and who's not. I mean,
Mhm.
it's very easy and quick. I mean, to figure out if they know something or they're just reading out of a book and just, oh, the pharmacy said to put, it's like, this is how you prescribe it, this is how you do it. This is an art, it's not a science. It is a science, but it's also an art to knowing people and how to start them, because otherwise they're going to yell at you and they're like, guys, and these are not, like we said, none of these are cheap, so they're eventually not going to come back to you. So that's just and I mean, there were a bunch of societies out there that had certification. Those don't honestly exist anymore. A4M has the certification. The International Peptides Society had a certification that doesn't exist anymore. They went out of business after COVID. So it's really, look at an anti-aging doctor and then talk to them. I mean, and talk to the doctor for 5 or 10 minutes and ask them to explain what they would do with you. And again, that's the simplest way to do it. And also that's the simplest way, but there's no perfect solution.
Yeah, right. It's still a little bit on the fringe. So there's definitely people that it's very clear that that's their area, such as yours. So what states are you able to see people in where you're licensed if someone wanted to do a telemedicine consult with you?
Yeah, right now, I mean, I'm licensed in like 20 states, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm in the big ones. I'm in Texas, Texas, California. Hoping this goes like Texas, Florida, California, and then New Jersey. I'm based in New York, so New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. It's that this patients be aware that it's actually the opposite in a lot of cases, that a lot of states, especially California, it's almost impossible to get peptides. So you need to make sure the doctor knows how to get you the peptides. Is actually harder than finding a doctor at this point, because it's almost like, I can order these 2 from here, these 2 you can't get. It's become a puzzle, and I mean, I spend more time trying to figure that out than anything else, or having my nurse figure it out. So
exactly, yeah. The compounding pharmacy I used 4 years ago, I can't get it from anymore, and then I switched to another one, and now I can't get it from them, and it just keeps changing. We'll talk offline on what you're using. Okay. Yeah. So I know we're about to wrap everything up here, but I just wanted to ask you pretty quickly on your thoughts on wearable devices. Like, what are maybe your top 3 that you like, and how can the data be best utilized to help guide people through their wellness journey? Like, I've got the continuous glucose monitor on my arm right now, and I find that to be very beneficial to kind of check in once every 6 months, because things shock me. I can have chicken and a teeny amount of rice, and my blood glucose will jump up to 180. So rice is not my friend. And I wasn't aware of that beforehand. So, like, what devices are you a big fan of?
yeah, you hit that on the head. I mean, I love continuous glucose monitors or CGMs, but they're short term. They're not most people don't need to wear them for 6 months at a time. It's like a month. Okay, I know it's wrong, or how my exercise, how I feel when I work out fast, and so on. That's where it's great for. And then you can put it away for a couple months.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely useful. I'm a BioStrap guy. I find it has the most broad range data and the most usable.
I don't know what
data.
BioStrap is. What's BioStrap?
BioStrap is kind of like if the Oura Ring and Whoop had a baby.
Oh, okay.
They'll love that one. So yeah,
where do you put it on your body? Because I don't.
It's like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, something like that.
So nothing on your fingers. It's on your wrist.
It's on your wrist. You
Perfect.
can attach a heart rate monitor if you want to monitor your heart rate. It does pulse ox. The sensors are better, and then also the data is more usable. There are other products out there which I asked a lot of patients. Okay, so you have all this cool data and you put it on Instagram. What are you actually going to use? What are you going to do with it? So I think that's my kind of thing now. I kind of have to translate it for them and explain to them, okay, this is what you do with this and this. I mean, so I would say definitely the BioStrap. I'm a big fan of the Apollo Neuro.
Yeah.
It's great. It's really, it uses vibration for both anxiety and pain. So I really like that one too. And I think it's not again, it doesn't give you data. And in terms of sleep, there's 2 products. I mean, the best thing, the new one's out there called Somnify, which has a little bit better data than some of the other ones that are out there. It's also a little more expensive. So if you want to use your Oura Ring, it's great as well. So that's kind of my go-tos at this point. And then so we talked about the CGM already.
That's great. And I know you have a great breakdown on your Instagram page. So we'll direct everybody there as well for just endless information. It's really helpful. I'm so grateful that you found the time to make this happen today. Thank you so much. And I have one last question I ask everyone. How do you, Dr. Paulvin, define radiance?
Radiance. Right. Very simply, radiance is being yourself, being honest, and being happy. Because otherwise, you're not going to show your true self, and then it's just a bad day. So those are kind of really quick, simple stuff.
No one wants a bad day. I think that's a great answer. Thank you so much. Loved having you.
Thanks. It was a good time. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Bye.